What about me makes me unable to tell this story?
You're a cis white female with privilege. How in any way does that make you right to tell this story?
A new growing path, for fuck's sake. It properly, you've got to word it properly so someone can't take offence to it. You know what, I'm just going to go outside and dig myself a hole. Hello, welcome back. Immersive sports science, not bro science. If you want any more information, subscribe down below, smash that bell. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the documentary and giving the review of it, of Fat-Topia. As a part of this review, I will be looking at not only the documentary, but the news article written about him, and the debate had between Dr. Joshua Wolrich.
There are so many reasons to exercise. None of them have to be about weight.
And Everyday Dam's Fitness, Alan Roberts.
If you want to say this is the way it should be, you should be able to put your name and face to that shit. I think we should support each other more. My wife and I literally run support groups for obese people.
Normalises obesity. I feel like it's a really dangerous road to go down.
Fat-Topia is a documentary about fat acceptance, where the filmmaker, Connor Luke Simpson, enters the world of fat acceptance. Fat acceptance is a provocation, a social movement that is seeking to change the negative stigmas and stereotypes surrounding being obese or fat. He tries to argue that everything we know about obesity is wrong, or will this movement just become a footnote in history? This will not cover Connor Luke Simpson's other project, which is the Teach project. Naturally, I'll be using my rather objective model, I hope it's objective anyway, to try and work out a score based upon these principles. Connor Luke Simpson clearly states his standpoint and opinion, which is a positive thing because in science, for instance, we always have to state our potential biases or potential conflicts of interest before moving on to actually doing the research, so that the reader, or in this case the viewer, will understand why he thought this way, why they potentially moved that way, and potentially, you could say, criticise him in certain respects, or critique his work with a greater understanding of what he's trying to achieve. Coming from a viewpoint that is separate, he's then trying to move himself away from this viewpoint to the viewpoint of fat acceptance. Note, he is doing this from a standpoint of fitness and health first approach, rather than the fat acceptance idea of body positivity. I'm not saying that he's not body positive, because most people in the fitness industry, for instance, are body positive. They just don't necessarily associate themselves with that movement. We then got to say that as from this point on, his potential viewpoint may be biased, and this will ultimately affect his opinion and the image he's trying to show of fat acceptance. Though he does do a good job in trying to keep the middle road. Now this reminds me that I must state my own potential biases. I'm a personal trainer and an athletics coach, and therefore for me my viewpoint or standpoint is from a health and fitness perspective first. Therefore this kind of indicates potentially any potential biases I may have towards that sector of society. Connor goes on a journey where he interviews people from both the fat acceptance community who like to refer themselves as being body positive. That's kind of the in word, or in reality it's only one sector of that movement. We've also got the health at every size and the healthy at every size, which Dr. Joshua Wolrich explains is slightly different in that health at every size is to seek or engage in healthy activities, whatever that is, or wherever that may be. Whereas healthy at every size is stating that anyone can be healthy at any size. From this, he tries to answer the question he made at the beginning. The experts he's used for both the debate and the documentary were a wide range of experts. Yet, I would say it was also at the same time very limiting. Limited selection, and we didn't necessarily get the full breadth of what they had to say. We could have had some of them more in depth inside the actual documentary themselves, or maybe a little explainer later like he did with the outtakes. And at the same time, they're only from one side of the argument. We didn't really have anyone from Fat Acceptance, which is a shame, really, and it kind of affected his work. The reason being why this is a shame, because he mainly focused on trying to gather those from the extreme side of Fat Acceptance. Those people don't necessarily represent the majority of those people within inside the Fat Acceptance community. If you like using the words of the Dr. Scott on the ancient Greeks, but we can apply this to what we're going to say. Those on the extremes of society often shout louder in order to be heard. And for them, in order to be heard, they are screaming at you. For instance, Sonia Lee Rochetois believes in the destruction of capitalist society.
So long, fat people have been at the mercy of capitalism.
And blaming capitalist society is rather ironic, because many of these people have businesses.
And runs Club Indulge, a body-positive events company.
So, go figure. They're capitalising from capitalism. Now this segues me nicely into the concept of false victimisation, or we can get rid of the false element and just call it victimisation. Many of the Fat Acceptance communities see themselves as a victim of society. They are being discriminated against. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I'll let you decide. Sometimes perception is greater than reality. They perceive themselves to be a victim, society to be unprogressive, violent society that discriminates against fat bodies. When we look at it closely, this could be perceived as being preposterous. When vast majority of the population of people are overweight or obese, in a society that has made it illegal to discriminate under law, especially if you live in the US, Europe, or the UK. There are laws against that kind of discrimination. And there are many members in high society or in prominent roles and positions who are clearly overweight or obese. Yet, with victimisation, perceptions is sometimes stronger than reality. Connor alluded to one person he contacted for a debate, and she replied, "Why should I have to debate my existence?" Going slightly off topic, Cassie Jane talks about feminism and the MRN movement, or men's rights movement, about what happened in her mind of an individual who meets the so-called enemy.
I was hearing them speak, and I knew the cameras were recording. But in those moments of sitting across from my enemy, I wasn't listening. What was I doing? I was anticipating. I was waiting to hear a sentence, or even just a couple of words in succession that proved what I wanted to believe, that I had found the misogynist.
Like if we were doing a story about African Americans and Black Lives Matter, then I could see the reason for concern. But this is completely different.
And that is the clearest example of your fatphobic ideology so far.
Well, I couldn't keep denying the points they were making. There are real issues. But in my effort to avoid agreeing with my enemy completely, I changed from putting words in their mouth to acknowledging the issue, but insisting they are women's issues.
Some people want a conflict, they want a war between the two sides. If you think about it at the moment, this is why I want to cross that debate. I want to receive mutual middle ground between the two movements. Because at the moment, we're both in echo chambers, within a bubble. Our voices and our opinions are bouncing off the walls. And we are talking only to ourselves, only to then shout across a void at one another, telling each other how they are, well, misunderstood is not the right word, but misinformed, how their ideas aren't correct, and in a way their ideas will be seen alien. But we need to get to mutual ground, we need to get to a middle ground, so that we can stop this in a way. We can come to an agreement, and even if that agreement is, I agree to disagree with you, that's fine, that's perfectly fine. We need to end the polarisation, which is seemingly epidemic throughout society at this present moment in time, worldwide, especially online. And this reminds me, Courtney, if the offer is still on the table, I'm willing to answer your questions, I'm willing to have a debate, or whatever format it is that you want, in whatever way you want. I'm willing to have that debate in any way, shape or format you wish. If the offer's still on the table, I'm here. I'm open any time you want to answer or ask those questions. With victimisation, often comes a sense of shame, a sense that society is against you. You start perceiving whatever anyone says to be anti this, anti that. And it might be, don't get me wrong, it might be. But you need to look at it further beyond, here is my enemy, I have to attack that enemy. Because some arguments to survive, they have to have an enemy. For some people to reach cult-like status or a cult-like nature, and hence I say cult-like and not cult, you kind of want to attack the science behind it. Why do people want to attack the science behind it? And this goes on to a wider question in society itself. Science is being attacked, but at the same time science is put on a pedestal by society, and that could be because of the polarising views. It could be that science is perceived as being elitist. Books, journal articles are sometimes very hard to read and understand. When someone goes out, they look at things anecdotally, they look around them. This must be happening because I am seeing it with my own two eyes. This is my perception of objective reality. Yet, objective reality is different for everyone. Now, there are also massive caveats with this.
But we've not had all of the same life experiences.
Connor Luke Simpson missed a massive one here. He could have gone into victimisation a lot more than what he really did. He missed the sexualised nature of fat acceptance. So one section of fat acceptance is stuffers and gainers. Yes, nailed it without being offensive. But unless we tackle these concepts like stuffers and gainers, like those who are into it without trying to sound discriminatory, then we can't talk about fat acceptance in its whole. We can't talk about fat acceptance without the body positivity movement. We can't talk about it without Hayes. In order to talk about fat acceptance in its widest complete form, we need to talk about everything. And this is one thing he fails to do. It might be because he had a 45-minute documentary, but in my opinion, the documentary needed to be an hour long. It was almost too short. Some people could argue, very slow-moving documentary. I personally disagree. Now, what might have also affected the length of the documentary and therefore the information in is because some members of the fat acceptance community felt reluctant to partake in the documentary. And that's fine, that's their own personal preference. There's no one forcing you, or you should not have anyone force you to do something you don't want to do. But we didn't get to hear their arguments. We didn't get to hear their side of the story. And that was a massive shame because it affected the documentary's quality. We could have heard more from your society, more from your community. A big social media documentary, that's what it is an online phenomenon. You could have really explained your side of the opinion a lot better, in a lot more depth. Instead, what we got, that the fat acceptance community is not really in touch with everyone else or reality. And you could have eliminated this idea that all members of the fat acceptance community are extremists with weird beliefs and ideologies that are dangerous to society, simply by stating what you're here for, in depth and in the needs that Connor needed in order to answer this documentary. From a flip point of view, what was Connor's approach that was so alienating for many members of this society?
I honestly don't think there would be the hate and the vitriol, because that's what so many of them say. They're worried about sort of the trolls and the army, from which comes up a lot, Alan Roberts and all these sort of creators coming over and giving them a lot of hate and making it really hard. And a lot of them say, I don't want to get on camera. I think everybody would come off so much better, and we'd actually be able to sort of understand each other. That's the thing. I don't think anybody understands each other.
You also briefly touched upon the safe space argument, and many members in the fat acceptance community, because they feel like a victim of society, that have been discriminated, feel like they need a safe space in order to express their argument. And that is good, because you're able to express how one feels without the fear of what others will feel about you. Yet again, a negative with safe spaces, and it ultimately depends on your definition of what a safe space is, because what you end up creating is a microcosm of society who alienate themselves from society rather than adding to society. And this is why I want to meet a middle ground. But likewise, like I said, it depends on your definition. That is one definition of safe space, a space for ideas to be expressed amongst one set of society. Is in the UK, for instance, all universities are safe spaces, which is great. But we had a problem leading out of 2010, and that is, within the universities in the UK, allowed for a base to attack other people's opinions. Now, I'm not going to give you a clear definition, but it can be paraphrased under Theresa May's government. We could call it, let's rephrase it as the Theresa May definition. As one must accept the opinion of others, providing they accept the opinion of someone else within inside a singular debate. And each opinion must be tolerated, provided that that opinion itself, or stance or viewpoint, tolerates others. So I may not like your opinion, but I have to stand there and tolerate your opinion, and I expect vice versa, which is not something that's happening at the moment online in many communities. And that leads back to the polarization, because both sides have created an echo chamber.
So if you have time to go back to his account and report the one he put up today, using my image and linking to a video about me, it would mean a lot. This is what he does, you know, he steals content from fat activists to make really disgusting videos and posts about them, and then stick his following on them. So it's not the end of the world. My block thumb is strong and growing stronger. But yeah, if you have time to report, it's much appreciated.
Worried about is the criticism. She didn't like to hear that. She didn't like to hear anything negative, which is a real shame. And it's weird that we can do this in this new modern world. It's like, you think about when people just used to speak face to face and have debates. You couldn't just go delete, report, goodbye, whoosh, you're gone, and you wouldn't hear any criticism. People used to have to hear criticism, things that they didn't like, and then you would understand your opinion, and then you'd have to validate your opinion and see if it was right, and you would go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But now people have the ability to report, delete, block, buy, nope, I don't have to hear anything I don't want, and that's called an echo chamber, ladies and gentlemen.
And we need to burst those bubbles. But in order to do that, we need to have a listening position. That's me off my soapbox. It was an indie style film. It had that indie film feel about it. But at the same time, it was very professionally done in certain ways. But there's certain things I just can't ignore about the structuring of it. Cameras, for instance. Stop shaking the camera. Stop shaking. Invest in a fucking tripod! Although it was very, very artistic. Where he was standing, the colours used. However, the times felt like the audio and the camera work was a bit amateurish. Says the guy whose audio and camera work is amateurish and not so good. Hey, I'm an expert in that. The next negative could be talked about the overuse of fair right usage, B-roll. I personally don't see a problem with it. Says the guy who uses fair right B-roll, overuses it. And what I don't understand is the censoring of it. Was that he says to be sued? I'm not sure. I think that was from an artistic point of view, and I think the artistic point of view missed the mark quite considerably. In terms of censoring it, and I'm looking at it from a literal point of view, who these people are, and I know what they look like. Some of these stuff is from TED Talks. You're allowed to use a TED Talk. You're allowed to split the TED Talk up. I've done that. I've used the presentation background of a TED Talk and the basing of one to do a YouTube video about our athletes actually improving, which you can see here. Got a little bit of stick though. And I think that's what's happened with him. He's got a little bit of stick from using something that's within his own right to use. People want to remain the right to be publicly private and at the same time privately public. It's an odd concept that's only developed in the last few years. And if you compare it to, for instance, the Times Guide to Facebook, which I have a copy of at home, if something is public, put online, it's fair and free for anyone to use. Now, our laws and rules have changed quite considerably since then, and quite rightly so.
I talk about in the film Fat-Topia. Like I said, if you have seen Fat-Topia, it's not going to be anything surprising to you. You're going to be very aware of this type of behaviour. It's the whole idea of fair use, which is a real shame that we kind of don't understand how fair use is. When this happens a lot of the time now, people don't like something, so they think, you're stealing my content. I had this the whole time with Fat-Topia. People were saying, I was stealing content, I was stealing content, I was stealing content. No, I didn't take any of your content out of context. I had it in the context it was, and I added my commentary to it. I added something to it. That's the whole thing about it. It didn't have any negative value on the market of the original. In fact, I would probably add that it had positive impact if any of the content I was using was monetizable. here's the thing, people don't like the word fair use when, you know, they're getting criticised. They think, well, no, it's not fair.
So for people to complain about copyright, it's just nonsensical. Many people from the fat acceptance community, they're slightly hypocritical in certain ways. They create content and then they don't want that content to be used, criticised or critiqued in any way beyond their initial meaning, regardless of if the next meaning is positive or not. And I don't know if it happens to the fitness community so much, it possibly does. Please, if you've seen examples of this, whack it down in the comments below. It's a form of warfare to them.
Now, let's not beat round the bush. Weight stigma is very much a real thing. It's a real phenomena. If you experience weight stigma from an individual while you're growing up in life, you, in a way, are kind of conditioned to see that, and it will have lasting mental health effects upon you. Think of it, you walking down the high street and you see a person with a top hat, and then you see another person with a top hat, and you think to yourself, there's lots of people wearing top hats, but in reality, you're conditioned yourself to see things in a certain perspective.
But from an artistic point of view, I understand what he's trying to do. There are slightly hidden communities, slightly mysterious, dark, secretive, and having their eyes blacked out, that kind of thing. That kind of emphasise that in black and white, monochrome colours. Colours that complement each other and seem dark and... yeah, it just didn't work. It doesn't work for this sensitive topic. It doesn't work for the people you're trying to bring into the environment, to try and get their viewpoints. All it probably does is just alienate them, to be honest. So now we go on to the synopsis itself. And I base this not only on my argument, but the arguments I've seen around the internet from accredited reviewers, so to speak. Fat-Topia is a weird one. It will either divide or unite people, which is ironic because its sole aim was to expose an area of society that is gaining notoriety but is somewhat hidden or not known about in mainstream society, and in many ways is misunderstood. It's to shine the light on it, and he failed in that in my respects, but he gave us an understanding beyond that in other respects. It can be stated, and it does not necessarily escape some people's opinions, depending on what side of the fence they sit on, that quite a lot of the people in there are probably being criticised for their weight, with females representing the vast majority of the fat acceptance people asked to participate on the documentary or the debate. It can be seen that the vast majority of those criticisers are male or male presenting. I would disagree with that, but that is one argument. The views stated by all those members are narrow and ignores the circumventing and blatant evidence that we have accumulated both scientifically and through other means. The fat acceptance community and the fat acceptance community's view of science, and I'm not sure that Connor Luke Simpson brought that all in together. He has many positives, but he has many negatives in this documentary. He has a good range of experts, guests, although they are mainly from one side of the fence, because many felt scared off. How can you be scared off by a man like him? But anyway, they felt scared off, which is a huge shame. This may be because he's trying to appeal to the extreme side of fat acceptance. And as we know, those on the extreme side of society often have to shout louder in order to be heard, or feel like the enemy is trying to attack them. All in all, I found it a very enjoyable documentary. However, we can't escape the fact that there are many flaws in this documentary and the debate itself. The amateurish indie nature kind of went for and against it. The debate was highly engaging, as well as the news article which went into the making of Fat-Topia, and it gave us a bit of understanding beyond those viewpoints. Many of those experts who included outside of in the outtakes during the credits could have been included in and could have given us a more wider, in-depth understanding of fat acceptance and the counter-arguments to fat acceptance. Not being an hour long, we found a deep dive into effectively what is a sensitive topic to many. As stated by Dr. Joshua Wolrich, sometimes, or to this community, taking a certain approach may not work, taking an aggressive approach may not work, because you're seen as attacking them, which is not the case. Or maybe the BBC learnt this from when they did their documentary, come reality TV show thing. called Who Are You Calling Fat, where they try to view it from a fat person's point of view and presented it in a way that was lovely and fluffy, I suppose, towards that community, without necessarily going into the theatrics of effectively what Connor Luke Simpson did. All in all, I give this a
81. Yes, I know, I shocked myself when this result came up. However, I could not disregard predominantly one-sided arguments and the production value.